Now, tenor Alfie Boe is tonight's guest on a brand new South Bank show, talking to Melvyn Bragg about his life, his singing, and what it was like playing one of the biggest musical roles, Jean Valjean in Les Mis. This is Sky Arts 1 HD.
Bring him joy. He is young, he is only a boy. You can take, you can give. Let him be, let him live. If I die.
Alfie Boe grew up here in Fleetwood on the Lancashire coast. He's the most popular tenor ever to come out of this country. He's crossed the border between classically trained, which he was, and a singer of popular songs, which he is, and he's bringing the two together. In that sense, he's in the tradition of Caruso, Mario Lanza, Richard Tauber, all of whom he heard on records when he was a child here in Fleetwood. What he's trying to do is quite difficult because of the opposition between people in one camp saying the popular music and in another camp saying classical music. But he maintains that there's only one kind of music, and that's good music. There's two things about your story. One is extraordinary, and one, when you look at it closely, has happened a great number of times to artists. They've come from apparently nowhere and gone to the top. The more regular way of looking at it is that somebody with the talent very often finds a way to realise it, and on they go. So there's both things going. One's a bit of a fairy tale, and one's hard work. And the fairy tale we hear about a lot. The young boy who worked in a garage was discovered, and next we know he's ruling the world.
Exactly.
That's the fairy tale. Well, it has that aspect to it. But one thing that really does matter, I think, there was music in their childhood. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Now, whether it was what McCartney heard, which was one sort of music, where it was Pavarotti heard, which was another sort of music, both of them had a lot of music when they were young. Did the same thing happen to you?
Without a doubt, Melvyn. I come from a family of 9 kids. You know, everyone had their own taste in music. My father, you know, was the biggest influence when it came to music. He had records from Caruso, Tauber, Paul Robeson he was a big fan of. It was quite funny because he always tried to impersonate these guys. So he'd start impersonating the Taubers, and then he'd go on and try and impersonate Paul Robeson, this real deep, rich voice. And then he tried to impersonate Carl Denver, you know, so the total opposite voice. And it was So hearing these different voices and different sounds and different styles of music was a real education for me. My father was a process worker for ICI, but he worked prior to that delivering groceries for the co-op on his push bike, and ended up meeting my mother and falling off his bike head over the handlebars, when he saw her walking down the street.
So the 9 of you are in, I presume, a reasonably modest house. So
Yeah.
you got used to having to find your own space, your own way through quite early on. You were the youngest.
I was the
Were
youngest
you
of
spoiled
9.
to bits because of that?
Yeah, it's funny they say that. A lot of people think that that's the case, but my mother's proud of the fact that she brought up all the kids the same way. She says that, My elder brother, Joseph, will argue that like crazy and said that he had it tougher than anyone else. And but then she did whisper in my ear the other day, said, "You're my favourite, you know that, don't you?" And so I took that, which is nice.
I've often thought that in many ways some of the best education we have is completely unconscious. We don't know we're getting it. But that filtered through your mind from a very early age.
Totally, Mo. And I spent 4 years at the Royal College and at the National Opera Studio. That education was amazing. It gave me really developed my technique and stamina. But my true education in music started at home as a kid. That was the best education that I'd ever had, really, because it lit a fire. It planted a seed, and it lit a tiny flame inside of me that I knew one day would blossom and blow up,
Because inside all this, what's going on is that you're learning the joy of music. You're learning about keeping a beat. You're learning about harmonies. You're learning all sorts of things, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, and you're learning styles, musical approach, interpretation of songs, pronunciation. It's an amazing education when you hear how Elvis sings O Sole Mio and how Richard Tauber sings O Sole Mio. It's two completely different, same song but different styles.
A key moment for the young Alfie was when one of his older brothers gave him an unusual present, a recording of La Bohème.
It was the Thomas Beecham recording with Vittoria de Los Angeles and Jussi Björling singing Rodolfo. I was probably about 9 years old, something like that, and didn't think much of it. I just listened to it and could appreciate it at that age, but didn't obviously understand what was going on and what it was all about. But it wasn't until I was 21, when I was in the D'Oyly Carte Opera Company, that somebody bought me this recording as a present because I was auditioning with the song Che gelida manina from La Bohème to go and sing to a conductor at the Royal Opera House. And it was my first major audition, really, apart from auditioning for the D'Oyly Carte. So I was learning this aria, first operatic aria I ever learned, and listening to this recording, and I thought, this sounds so familiar. This recording, these voices, I've heard this before, and I can't picture where it was. And then it wasn't until I actually went home and discovered the Highlights album again that my brother had got me, and put the two together, and it was the same thing, same recording. And it was, again, it's that little seed that was planted many years ago, and that tiny flame that needed to be reignited when I heard the full thing.
I beg you stay here with me, and I'll tell you very briefly just who I am, how I live, and what my dreams are.
So you're singing, and you're surrounded by singing from records. Was there any time before you were 15 or 16 that you thought, I can be, and I'd like to be, and I aim to be a singer?
I always dreamt that something would happen. I always dreamt that my life was going to be different, and a lot of my visualizations have been very sort of poignant and strong, and they've sort of come true. They've happened.
Such as?
having an interview on the South Bank show was one visual. Visualising that I would one day be playing a big arena, visualising that I'd be on stage in an opera house, visualising that I would have my own concerts with my own band. You know, I'm still working at it, still trying to get it perfected and make that visualisation happen in the way I saw it years ago, but it's getting there.